Hi guys, this week on the podcast, we're going to be talking about video games, vinyl, record shops, and a whole lot more with Brandon Elvis Oak. Let's get into it. Hi guys, Randy here from the Vinyljunkie podcast. And this week on the podcast, I have a fella who I met probably just about a month ago in the line of record store day at Pop Music. I approached him because he looked familiar from a video game shop in Oshawa, and it was exactly who I thought it was. And we've been kind of chatting ever since. I'd like to welcome to the podcast Brandon Elvis Oak. Hey, Brandon.
What's up, y'all? What's up? Glad to be here. Thanks for having me as a guest. Super exciting. I think this is the first time I've ever been a guest on a podcast. I've done one for a project.
Oh yeah,
in university, but I've never been a guest on one. So this is super exciting. And what better way to be on it than talk about my favorite thing in the world, which is records and tapes, but mainly records.
For sure.
I think we'll delve into.
It's funny because the first time, I think you'll get a kick out of this. The first time I was on a podcast, my cousin runs one, which is a Filipino podcast.
Oh, cool! Yeah,
it's like they touch on cultural things and stuff as well. And he had me on talking about Animal Crossing: New Horizons.
Oh wow! Okay.
when it first came out, so because me and all my cousins were all on the game playing it.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a little bit of a phenomenon at the time, especially with COVID and all that. So
no, I mean, I've been a huge Animal Crossing fan since I was a kid. So, it was quite a serendipitous thing, right? That, the world is shut down, but we have this game where we can still visit each other and be able to communicate. And, it's, the game could not have dropped at a better time. It unfortunately dropped at that time, but at the same time, it was definitely something very, very needed in, the bigger realm and the bigger space. I don't think that game
would have done as well as it did.
Absolutely not.
If it weren't for COVID. So
yeah,
there's definitely people playing Animal Crossing that I know weren't playing Animal Crossing before this iteration.
Oh, yeah. I do remember, I think I was reading actually a stat on that. So I believe within the first, I think it was 4 to 6 weeks, New Horizons outsold all the other copies of any other Animal Crossing game combined in the first 4 to 6 weeks. So
that's pretty insane.
I'm not surprised by it, right? So,
but I know you have looping this back into our discussion. We'll probably get into your video game vinyl a bit later, and I know you have some neat little Animal Crossing pressings that I hope we'll show off. But before we get into that, so Elvis is your middle name. So does that mean was music a big part of a big thing in your family? Were your parents big Elvis fans?
So they weren't. My dad's name is Elvis, so I just happened to be named after him. But I mean, ever since I was a kid, I have very vivid memories of going on road trips. So my family's from out east, so we would actually drive all the way out east every other summer. Yep. So I have very vivid memories of us burning CDs and listening to music all the time. So my biggest, the band that really got me into music when I was young was Pink Floyd. My dad's a huge Pink Floyd fan. He's pretty much one of the main people who got me into music. I remember one year we burned every single Pink Floyd album and listened to them on the road trip in chronological order. We
Oh
started with
wow.
Piper at the Gates of Dawn, worked all our way up to Division Bell. Yeah, and so very, very, core memory for me. He's a big Roger Waters guy too. So like all of his solo stuff. Him and I have seen Roger Waters in concert like 5 times.
Oh wow.
When they did Dark Side of the Moon, when he did The Wall, when he did the This Is Not a Drill tour. So I've seen Waters a whole bunch. We've seen Nick Mason do his Saucer Full of Secrets both times when he's come through to Toronto. We've The one I'm hoping for now is just David Gilmour, just so I can say I've seen all three. And I know he's got a new record or something like that coming out. So if he ever comes up here, it'd be super cool to see him. I know he played in like when he did On an Island back in 2006. I know he played at Massey Hall. I missed out on that one, but yeah. So my dad's now more into like he's a big like blues and garage and psych guy, which is really, really cool. So like to see
Okay.
the kind of music that he really listens to. He's been Some of the stuff that he's been listening to recently. He's a big fan of Camel. So Camel's like an old psych band from late 60s, early 70s, and Nectar. He's like a big Nectar guy, which is super cool.
Yep.
And then on my mom's a huge like 80s woman. She loves Bon Jovi and Poison and like Cinderella and groups like that, right?
All the
So
hair
I
bands.
know. Oh man, yeah, and it's great too because like even like Def Leppard and stuff like that, and even I've kind of delved into it a little bit in terms of like some of like the more obscure stuff. So like I'm actually a big fan of Nitro. Have you ever heard of Nitro?
No, I haven't.
Nitro was a band that the vocalist, his name was Jim Gillette, and he was really famous for being able to like break glasses with his voice. He had that pitch. He was actually on like Mythbusters once, and he did all that. And the guitarist, his name was Michelangelo Badio, and he was known for having this wild four-necked guitar, and he played at like ridiculous speeds and stuff like that. So I've delved into like them, and another really cool late 80s, early 90s band is called Racer X. Racer X was Paul Gilbert. So Paul Gilbert was like a pretty well-known like progressive metal guitarist, and that was his first start, was playing all the LA clubs and stuff like that in Racer X. So that was more like the speed metal side of things. But yeah, so I mean, I've had a lot of influences from my parents on both sides, and being able to kind of find my own way and my own kind of things in music. But it's been a trip, right? It's been a journey. So
What would you say? So if I were to look at your collection,
mhm.
what would I find there?
I want to say a mix of everything, but it is mainly metal, a fair amount of punk. I'm a big fan of like post rock, so bands like Explosions in the Sky, Japanese band called Mono, really orchestral, pretty much all instrumental stuff. Band called This Will Destroy You, it's like one of my favorite bands of all time. Actually, looping back to Explosion in the Sky, I actually flew out to Portland last year. They were playing their record, The Earth Is Not a Cold Dead Place, and they played it from front to back in the middle
Oh
of
wow.
this square in the middle of like Portland, where there was a big open red brick square, and that they have shows there, during the summer. And like, oh man, it was mid-August, so it was right before my birthday. And like they had played just as the sun was going down, so like the sun was reflecting off the buildings right in front of the courthouse, and it was a magical experience. One of the coolest things I've ever experienced in shows, and I've seen a lot of shows. So if we want to get into cool shows, we can get into that too. I got a lot of them.
So do considering you don't collect necessarily your regular pop,
Yeah.
top 40s stuff, is your collection mostly picked up from going to shows?
Some of it has been. Back when I was a teen and kind of getting into my late teens, early 20s, I would go into the city, into Toronto a lot, for a lot of like the DIY and punk shows, and like some of the early like emo screamo stuff. I met like some of my best friends through some of the shows there. And the cool thing is a lot of people would always have distros, right? So you would be able to kind of browse through and see all these bands that, everybody who would run a label would have like an FFO, like a for fans of. And so you would look at a record, you'd be like, oh, for fans of this band, if you like this, maybe you'll like this. And so, I picked up a lot of stuff and like learned a lot of stuff from that. A lot of the stuff that I also, even buy currently is pretty tough to find at like your normal, brick and mortar store. It's a lot of, I gotta import it. I gotta order it directly from labels because it's stuff that's really hard to sell, which I understand because, it's a pretty niche stuff to begin with. But I mean, some of the stuff I would frequent, going into Toronto a lot. I mean, as we mentioned, we ran into each other at Pop Music, but to drop a couple names, Rotate This and Emissions downtown is great, and Cops and Sonic Boom, and all those shops are great. Back when I was younger too, there was a store on Queen and Bathurst called Hits and Misses, and they were predominantly punk record store. And like the stuff I used to pick up from there and the stuff I wish I knew now, what I knew then, what I knew now, my collection would be double the size of what it is. I would have bought that store out like no problem because it just had so many cool things. And like I look back, I'm like, man, I wish had I known, I would have bought all that stuff like for sure. And some of it's pricey, some of it's just obscure. It's it's hard to find, it's hard to pick up. So, but I'm proud of what I've done, right? I've collected for like 15, 16 years. I started in terms of collecting, which I assume you would probably seg into anyway. So I'll do that for you. I remember I was like 15 and an uncle of mine who lived out in Belleville, he had a huge wall of records and I was like just in awe. I was like, oh, this is so cool to be able to like, I bought CDs here and there, but like looking at records and like, their artwork and, all the liner notes and stuff like that, I'd be like, oh, this is so cool just to be able to read through. And he's like, yeah, go ahead and you go, pick some out, bring some home with you. And I remember picking out Nevermind the Bollocks by Sex Pistols. I remember picking out my favorite Rush record, which is Caress of Steel. Super underrated Rush record in my opinion. Fountain of Lambeth is like one of my favorite tracks. And I remember he said I wasn't allowed to have his Pink Floyd. He wanted to keep his Pink Floyd, so I had to eventually get some Pink Floyd later on. But yeah, I still have some of them. It's got his name on it, which is super cool. I don't see him too much, but I know I recently saw him a couple years ago, and I like said to him like, you were one of the main people to get me into this, and it was we had a nice moment, right? It was really cool. So
does he still have that collection?
I don't believe he does. Nah, I know I had mentioned it to him and I was like, you still have all? He's like, nah, I had to get rid of them. I had to downsize and stuff like that. So, it's how that's the stories. I hear all those stories all the time about, my dad has a story. He used to have a ton of records, before I was even born. And he's like, we had to move. They were taking up space. So, off to Goodwill they went. So,
oh man,
it pains you, right? Because you never know, especially around that time, all the records and how the record, industry and how vinyl has obviously exploded in the past, 10 years, right? It's been,
I'm just trying to imagine like a time where people were just kind of putting the records on the curb.
Oh, like, dude. Yeah. Oh my God. Have you ever seen, so there's a movie called, have you seen the movie Vinyl? Alan Zweig was a Toronto document.
Yes.
It's excellent. I've watched that so many times, and just like him putting out crates of records across, wherever he was, downtown. I know he was like right downtown, and he would like film people, flipping through, the free records on the side of the road, and it was like it's really cool. It's a really really cool like snapshot in time. But yeah, the movie's great. So that's you just brought that up. I was like, yeah, it's a lot of great scenes in that. So
Yeah, no, you don't see that very often anymore. Even trying to find Goodwill finds are are harder these days.
oh yeah.
So I get are most of your records now kind of more ordering than, or
Oh yeah.
do you have s- your hideaway spots that you dig at?
No, honestly, yeah, it's probably 85 to 90% ordering. Once in a while, I'll go, browse around. I mean, my favorite places to go is Sonic Boom, like on the upstairs level. They have that like the new, and they rotate all the new stuff. So
Hmm.
like, if I go to Sonic Boom, I'm rarely ever looking in like the rock or the punk or the metal section. I'm looking either in the used or in their
Hmm.
rarity stuff in the back because they have all their more expensive stuff. Because like I'm at a point now where the stuff that I want is hard to find, really really expensive.
Yeah.
Um, so I'm either going there or again Emissions, which is out on Dundas and Ossington.
Okay.
They just moved from
They're
around
like
Spadina.
downstairs at one point.
Yeah, yeah, they were. So they were. Emissions was in a place kind of off, a little bit off the beaten path. They were like a couple blocks off Spadina, and they were attached to like a coffee shop. And then they moved to
Okay.
this bigger spot. It's like a downtown. It's right near. There's like a barber shop, and they're right down right there. They're like
Yep.
a 3 minute walk from Rotate, so they're pretty close together. Rotate's really good for their used stuff. And their metal and their punk is a good section. And then one other store I got to give a shout out to my friend and my homie Klaus. He has a shop up on the Danforth. It's Danforth and Monarch Park. It's called Futark. And it's completely metal.
Okay.
It's all metal and punk. It's a little tiny spot, but he's been running it for like 2 years. And he gets the stuff that like if I'm looking for something, I got to go there because I know uh, I'm not going to find it anywhere else. But he's got more of the extreme stuff, like the black metal, the death metal, some of the doom metal stuff. And he does it his by labels, obviously with a ton of labels being out. He'll order by label and have it all organized. So yeah, shout out to Klaus. He's awesome. He's super super good dude. Awesome dude for sure.
Yeah, you don't see that very often where they do buy labels. The other place that I've seen that at, I don't know if you've been to Tonality.
I've heard of
It's
it. I haven't been there yet. Yeah.
closer to, it's just off of, it's on Dundas West near Roncesvalles.
Okay.
Um,
Oh, West End. Okay. Yeah.
yeah, West End. And when he opened up, he had a lot of buy label sections in his store.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, yeah. I know it's cool. There's a couple, not too many. Like, I'm a big fan of a lot of like the Dynalone Records bands.
Yep.
So, Alexa on Fire, City in Color, and stuff like that. But they have like a shop right downtown too, which is super cool. So they can only carry their
Yeah.
own stuff, and they
I've
have
been there a
enough of.
couple times.
Nice. Yeah, I still haven't been in there. I've been meaning to. But yeah, like when they they finally repressed a lot of the old Lex on Fire stuff. I'm a huge, huge Lex on Fire fan. So I was able to finally, pick up stuff to fill in that I didn't have that I
Yeah.
wanted for so long, right? So, um,
Well, it's funny because I'm a huge City and Color fan, so I picked up some
I
of
love City Color, man. That's the
Dallas's stuff.
best.
So just a little crossover there.
One of my favorites. One of my talking about record store day too. I've been pretty lucky in the stuff that I've been wanting to pick up for record store day. One of my favorite ones is back in from 2009 around there. They pressed sometimes on vinyl, and it was really cool because they did a silkscreen jacket and they numbered it at a
Okay.
500. So I have one of those, and that was I remember finding that found that at when Sunrise Records was downtown, the big Sunrise, the flagship store.
Okay.
And
Yep.
that was my go-to. I would always hit them up every single year, probably from like 2007 to like 2012. Every year I'd hit up record store, and every year it was raining. Every year it was raining, and I would get poured on without fail. So, But that's one of my favorite ones for sure.
They actually had a really good used section upstairs at
They
that old
did.
Sunrise.
Mm-hmm.
Like I
remember
remember finding a lot of cool used records uh, at that location back in the day.
Yeah, I remember the base floor because so actually I used to actually work at the Sunrise Records in the Oshawa Center way back in the day. That was my first job, and it's something I still want to do. Is like I see it say to people, one of my favorite jobs ever was working at a record store, and if I had the opportunity again, I would take it in a heartbeat. It's just to be surrounded by something. Now, don't get me wrong, I love video games and stuff, but I think music is really where my passions are at. So, being able to sit around and play records and chat to people about music all day, I'd be in heaven. So, one day we'll get there.
We could open up one in Bowmanville or something. Oh, there's like a couple of knocks.
I don't think I would want to open one. I don't think I want to own it. The logistics seems pretty wild. But like working in one or helping manage one or something like that, that would be I'd be happy with that. So
yeah, I checked that one off my list a few years back. I used to work at Dead Dog Records for
nice, awesome.
Just for a couple months. It was like kind of like an in between job stint that I did. So that was kind of cool, and it was always interesting. Kind of, you think, oh, if I ever worked at a record store, imagine all the things I could play, and then you're on shift, and you're like, shit, what should I play today? And your mind,
you're just like, oh man, I'd be bad. I'd play like the same record like 4 times a day. I'd be terrible. I'd scare everybody off, man. It'd be bad. I used to one of my other jobs. I used to work at like a board game store, and I was really lucky where I had YouTube, so like I was able to play pretty much whatever I wanted. Obviously, I made the rule for myself where I'm not going to play anything with swearing. I'm in family friendly store, and I'm not going to play any super heavy black metal. With screaming and stuff like that to scare everybody off. But that's when I played a lot of post rock in the store. Really a lot of like chill vibe kind of stuff. Yeah. One of my favorite bands and favorite records that I played every single morning when I worked there for 4 years is a band from the UK called Maybe She Will, all one word. And they had a record called I Was Here for a Moment, Then I Was Gone. Very piano driven, post rock, pretty crescendo-y. But I played that record. No, oh my god! I probably played that record at least 1,000 times in that store, and I never get sick of it. That's a big, really important record for me. So, I like to associate that little story and wait. It's very, very you play that at 7:30 in the morning when the sun's coming up. It makes your day better. It 100% does.
So I'm looking behind you there over your shoulder, and I'm seeing your tape collection, or I guess part of your tape collection.
Part of it. I got that's about 2/3 of it. The other third of it is on the floor here because I don't have any more wall space. But yeah.
So what you were telling me before, you had like about 600 tapes or something like that?
Yeah. So I have up here. I got 4 of the Napa Valley racks that are completely full. I got 2 more down here. I got another like smaller, fits maybe about 60. That's like under my desk over here. Yeah. So I'm sitting at, I think when I last checked my Discogs, minus a couple maybe weird ones that just aren't on there, I'm probably close to about 700 tapes.
Wow.
So yeah.
How'd you get into tape collecting?
Yeah, tape collecting was a weird one. I think it tape collecting went hand in hand with some of the screamo and punk stuff. Not all the bands were wanting to be press expensive vinyl. So to be able to go up to, especially in Toronto, hit up Duplication and make a run of like 100 tapes, it's not going to cost you very much, and you could sell them for $5 a piece or something like that. And I kind of started with that. I used to go to a flea market out in Whitby. That was a Sunday only flea market, and one of the guys in there, he had a lot of really good tapes, and I nearly bought him out of tapes because he would have like so much good stuff. Like with tapes is really interesting, especially right now. Tapes is, I don't say it's coming back, but it's been around, and it's been an option for bands for a good amount of time that are you know lower cost but sound almost as, if not as good. I mean, if you're comparing tape to vinyl, tape's always been slightly a better like audio experience because you're getting magnetic compared to like all your maybe slight off bumps and stuff like that in vinyl.
Yeah.
But I mean, they're smaller. I can fit 400 tapes up on the wall, and 400 records are gonna be 3 times the space, right? But like some of the stuff and some of the even cool stuff, like with tapes, a lot of stuff even now, the hard stuff to find is the mid '90s stuff, because that's when CDs would were on the forefront, so they were really phasing out tapes too. And obviously, vinyl was a weird one because obviously mid '90s and early 2000s vinyl was pretty tough to find. But yeah, mid '90s tapes. One of the big collecting things in terms of tapes too is 80s and 90s metal is ridiculous. Like, there's a Canadian record label called Bonsai Records that did vinyl and tape, and their stuff was just really, really good quality. And so it's kind of really, really sought after in like the metal community for a lot of that kind of stuff. So they were doing stuff like, they put out some Slayer and some like Venom and like Bathory and stuff like that. So a lot of like that kind of stuff. Some of the early speed metal, they did a lot of speed metal back in the day. But yeah, all that kind of like hip hop too, like 90s hip hop for tapes is a huge, huge market. Like trying to find a copy of like Illmatic on tape, like good luck. It's really expensive.
Yeah.
It's wild. But yeah, like, I mean, I got into stuff like Killing Joke, I found through tape, like L7. So like some of that, older like Riot Girl stuff.
Yeah.
The Accused, I remember picking up a copy of Grinning Like an Undertaker by The Accused. And I was like, oh man, I've never heard anything like this before. This is like super cool. So, and I found that like in a big tape lot, right? I remember finding the 90s kind of shoegazy band Ride. I found their first 3 tapes at like, this flea market. So the first record, Nowhere, is excellent. Super, super good record. And one of my two tapes that I own that I can't believe I actually own, and it's not that they're hard to find, but they are just excellent records. You might know Talk Talk, right?
Yep.
Mark Hollis. And so the last 2 Talk Talk records, Laughing Stock and Spirit of Eden, are like, a lot of people say that those records are like the absolute pillar and foundation of post rock. Really, really kind of ambient stuff and really experimental stuff that Mark was doing before he was doing after It's My Life and Color of Spring. But yeah, I found those on tape. I remember finding one at that flea market, and the other one I remember finding at a thrift shop in Lindsay, in some drawer in the corner of the store, and they were asking 10 cents a tape, 10 cents a piece. And the 3 tapes, and I'll never forget this, I found that the Talk Talk tape, I think it was Spirit of Eden, a copy of Meat is Murder by the Smiths, and a copy of Angel Rat by Voivod. So really cool Canadian, Quebecois, like cosmic-y metal band. And I was like, how much are these? They're like 10 cents. I'm like, couldn't put my money down fast enough. You know what I mean? So, you get cool finds like that, man. As we were saying before, I have one little small tangent in terms of thrift store finds. And it's a really cool story that I always bring up to people, and they're like, they cannot believe it. I was at a chain around here, and I was kind of flipping through records, not expecting a thing. And I came across, after, flipping through your Nana Muscuri records and your Herb Alperts and stuff like that, I came across a original first pressing of Damaged by Black Flag, and was like,
wow.
what am I looking at? How am I holding this in my hand? And the way you can tell is on the back of the record, there's like a sticker that says, as a parent, I find this music anti-parent, which is pretty funny, and it's covering up the MCA Records label. And that was on there, which was like, I couldn't believe it. And it was $5, and this is like a $200 record. And I was like, what am I looking at? This is unbelievable. And couldn't get to the counter fast enough to buy it. And yeah, definitely my best thrift store find of a record in my life.
How long ago was that?
I don't think I'll top that. It's hard to. So
how long ago was that?
This was like 2021. I remember this was just after COVID. It was not very long ago. The other record I remember finding, and it's an easy record, but it was right beside the Diodes record, a little Toronto kind of power pop punk kind of punky band, the Diodes. I found their record. There's those two records side by side. I was like, these are the most out of place thing I've ever seen in my life. And I was like, holding these two records and couldn't make it to the counter fast enough, right? So, but yeah, good, really fun story. I love telling that story. So,
I guess you're lucky enough that whoever was working their pricing stuff didn't realize what they had, because a lot of times now you'll go to a thrift shop, and if it's any sort of named artist, it's like, okay, now
it's
this
in the
record
case for
which
$20,
normally,
right?
yeah, exactly. It's like $20 now instead of like $2 or $3.
Yeah, it's tough too, because like, especially at like a thrift store, like they're not going to even look they're rarely even going to look at the record. You know, they're going to be like, oh, this is a Bruce Springsteen record, $14.99, $24.99. They're not going to even look at the condition. You're going to open it up. You're going to have, scuffed up record, and you're like, well, thank you for letting me look. I'll put it back now. But yeah, it's you don't see. I don't really go out to thrift shops in terms of like records. Like I'll browse because I'm there.
Yeah.
But I mainly go like hit up thrift stores for tapes, because tapes is kind of interesting. You sometimes can come across something really cool. Just because people are not going to donate one tape. They're going to donate the tapes that they've been sitting in their basement for forever. And so you can come across, I've come across a couple okay things, but nothing like super crazy compared to the flea market. But yeah, I've come across like a couple really cool Primus tapes and stuff like that, and I've came across like a Dinosaur Jr. tape once. I was like, this is super cool. Some Silverchair and all those kind of like alt 90s stuff. So once in a while I find some gems in the rough, but
Well, yeah, and usually if you find one, you're gonna find a handful, assuming that it's not been picked over yet, because it's like you're saying, they're not just gonna donate one; they're donating like their collection, which they're not enjoying anymore or whatever.
Yeah, just taking up space, right? Because yeah, I mean, I guess it's kind of the same for records, but it's so strange. Like, to me, it's a very weird phenomenon that like when you go to like a thrift store, you always find just the same records. It's all just like these classical records and these Christmas records, and like again the Nana Muscuris and your Herb Alpert records. Like, I understand they sold tons of records, but like, is this their end of life cycle just always going to be at the at a thrift store? It's a very strange thing that it's always the same stuff there.
Well, about 10 years ago, there used to be a Goodwill Dundas West just between Keele and Islington. It's no longer there now.
Okay.
But whenever I used to go there, they just have like a small little bin, maybe 200 records fit in this bin or whatever. Always able to find something, find something interesting. Like, there's been a few times where I've walked out of there with like 10 or 15 records, but like longer the days of that happening, unfortunately.
Yeah. I think the last record I bought at a thrift store was an interesting one because I looked at the cover and I was like, this is something different. This is I've never seen this before and it doesn't belong. And the album was by a band called Penguin Cafe Orchestra. And I looked at the name, I was like, that's got to be something interesting. And I listened to it and really cool, really like avant-garde pop. Very, very. I've never really heard much like it before, but it's an interesting one. Yeah, I have it around here somewhere, but yeah, it was a very, very different record. And I looked even at the date; it was like 1981. So I was like, okay, this is onto something a little. It's not your 60s stuff. It's not your strange cruising 50s records. It's something a little off kilter. And yeah, it was a very, very interesting listen for sure. I was really, I wasn't like impressed. Like it wasn't like a crazy weird record, but it was definitely very ahead of its time record that I could like hear and listen. I was like, this is, a cool find for sure. I was like, I'd never seen it before in my life. So
yeah, no, that my last thrift store find was at a Value Village, and it was this house compilation called
cool.
Something underground, whatever, I can't remember. But the thing about that house compilation was I actually owned that same compilation from the early 90s on CD.
Oh, cool.
So the fact that I found, and it was like a promo copy, so it was just like generic white.
Normal like 12-inch, yeah.
But it was a whole album, and it was just like,
oh, cool.
And had all these kind of house bangers on it, and it was just kind of like at $4. And it's like, so
sure.
Here, take my money.
Take it, sure, it's something you don't come across. I remember like in terms of like that's a genre, like the electronic kind of stuff. I haven't really delved into much. I'm starting to get into like a little more like that, a little more like down tempo and whatnot. So like Portishead and groups like that. But yeah, like the house and the jungle and that stuff has never. I haven't really delved into it much, but I mean, hey, I'm open to checking out stuff. I'm always one to never, be like, I don't want to listen to that. I'll give anything a listen. And I can't judge it. I can't judge, a record just by its cover, right? I got to listen to it. You gotta see what it's, see what it sounds like.
I always try to find something, and I'll always find something good in whatever I'm listening to.
Sure, of course, yeah.
It might not be my total jam, but like, obviously you hear music and you kind of hear the artistry in it, whether it's your jam or not, right? So.
Yeah, that's actually funny that you mentioned that. An old friend of mine, she was mentioning an artist called, I think it's pronounced like Johnny. It's Zheani, and she's like a Australian kind of like almost like experimental hip hop artist. And I was like, all right, I'll give it a try. Let me see what it's like. And yeah, there's a lot of beats from some of the songs. I was like, oh, this is straight up like this is just the Prodigy. They're just ripping. They're just like, this is like sweet Prodigy worship. And I was like super stoked. I was like really digging it. And a lot of really cool like fuzz and like higher, like some of the like high energy kind of stuff that was in it. I was like, this is cool. I can dig this for sure. So yeah, it was again, it's always worth it to check out to listen to something because you're exactly right. To be able to find some kind of merit or to be able to like see where this artist has been influenced themselves by, right?
Yeah,
and kind of be like being able to tie that back to some of that old school kind of stuff is really cool to see their thought processes and whatnot. Well, so,
and I've also had like instances where there's a time and a place, and where I've been exposed to an album, didn't like it, but then re-exposed to it like years and years later, and absolutely love it. And it's just
Oh
kind of like,
yeah.
but I needed to experience this, and this first before I
For
could
sure.
appreciate that.
Yeah, no, 100%. So that's a really good the example that I have is over the past maybe 6 7 years, I have been absolutely I have fallen in love with Enya. Enya
Okay,
is
yeah.
like, oh my god, I consider her the greatest female artist of all time. Like, I know that might be blasphemy. I, you know, I love Aretha. I love, I get a lot of, where the, huge female artists came from, but like, the stuff and the experimentation and just what Enya was doing and what she was putting out and the fact that you know, she composed everything herself. I'm just blown away, but like by her stuff and like I've been really delving into a lot of like singer songwriter stuff, like female singer songwriter stuff specifically over the past again like 6 7 years.
Yeah.
But like Enya, I was super excited in like 20. It's funny. It's super late. I got in like Kate Bush in like 2019, right? A friend of mine, I had found. It's funny. I'd found Hounds of Love on tape, and a friend of mine was like, "Yo, sell me your Hounds of Love tape." I'm like, "Man, I haven't listened to it." He's like, "You haven't listened to this tape?" And so I had to put it on. And oh man, when Running Up the Hill hit, I couldn't believe my ears. I was so taken by what I was hearing, and yeah, and like so Kate Bush. I have almost all the Kate Bush records. I'm missing like two, but she was an artist that I really went off. Went after over the past 4 or 5 years. So like Lionheart, Never Forever, obviously Hounds of Love, but even some of her later stuff like 50 Words for Snow is excellent. Director's Cut, all that kind of stuff is super super good. Sade is like
Sade is fantastic.
oh my god, that's two I found. I found Diamond Life and Promise at a thrift store, a couple of years ago, and was like, this is the stuff. I was super super hyped to find that, but just oh man, her voice, just the fact that how she sings, she does not need to put effort into singing. It's just she's just perfect when she sings. I'm just like, oh, it's just so good. I'll do one more really cool shout out that I've been listening to recently. There's an artist called Cinderwell, and it's a female singer songwriter, kind of like almost like country folk, but
Okay.
a little bit more, little darker. And she's been incredible. I've been listening to her for the past maybe month and a half or so. There's a big, I'm not sure when this is going to air, but next week, the May 30th, June 1st and June 2nd, there's a big new festival that's happening in Toronto called Prepare the Ground. And it's like a focus on like heavy music, but not necessarily like metal. There's some like hardcore, there's some punk, there's some noise. There's a big noise set that's happening on one of the days. And there's a set on the Friday where it's a lot of female singer-songwriters. So Marissa Nadler, Emma Ruth Rundle, and then Cinderwell are playing this. And Cinderwell, I've just been just taken aback by just it's just this woman and her acoustic guitar, and it's just so raw, and it's just so evoked, and I'm super super excited to see her perform live. I'm very very
It's funny
excited
how
for that.
we've gotten into this kind of female singer songwriter rant, because that was kind of me in the late '90s, early 2000s. I really
Mm-hmm.
got on the kind of the Lilith Fair kick at the
Oh
time,
yeah, of course, yeah.
and like I was on mailing lists, and everyone was always kind of like, "Oh, have you heard this artist? Have you heard this artist?" And I was going to a ton of like singer songwriter shows like in the city,
Oh, that's
and
super cool.
so it's just kind of like that female voice and a guitar, and like just the storytelling magic that
Oh
happens
yeah.
is amazing.
Yeah, it's powerful, right? You know, it's um you're listening to, you know, a perspective that, I mean, you or I can't really understand, right? And so being able to, you know, even get some kind of semblance of that with, you know, through their art is, you know, uh very uh a very privileged thing to be able to listen to and to be able to understand is, you know, allow it, you know, being exposed to, you know, female singer-songwriters and women in music, right? It's it's really important, and you know, I back it 100%, right? 200% that, you know, I, you know, I'll support it any way I can. You know what I mean?
So I wanted to get to, I know you wanted to talk about this because
Yeah,
we've kind of started off at Pink Floyd and then went to like metal and your cassettes and then
yeah.
the
I'm a
songwriters,
tangent. I go off in tangents. So,
which is fantastic.
but
But like, I understand that you have a list that you put out every month,
I
um,
do, I do.
of albums of the day, and I'm
Hmm.
sure when people look at your list, they're probably quite shocked to see the variety of stuff in that list. Do you want to
Yeah.
tell our listeners about?
Yeah, I would love to. I did it. So this is only the second year I've done it. I did it back in 2020. I just decided one. I was like, I made it like a New Year's resolution that I was like, oh, I'm gonna listen to a record a day and kind of go through my collection, and you know, it really helped me kind of go through my collection and understand, you know, I bought something maybe I'd never listened to and like it looked kind of cool, and you know, being exposed to something like that. Um, yeah, I have a lot of fun with it. I'm able to, and what I'm doing as well is I'm doing my best to not repeat any artists. So I'm doing one artist for the year. So like if I did like a Pink Floyd record, I'd listen to one Pink Floyd record and that's it. Um, so I remember in 2020, I think I maybe missed 4 days out of the whole year. So it's pretty good, I must say. I know. So what I'm actually doing this month is I'm actually going alphabetical. So I'm doing A to Z.
Okay,
So today, I think I have it right here. I do, because I knew we were going to talk about this. So today was W. I listened to this here, which is a an old emo screamo supergroup called William Bonney. This is
okay.
their record called Good Vibes. It's a single. It's kind of an EP. It's only 6 songs. It's a single sided record. So I just kind of flipped that on. But the cool thing is, I'll show you this because it's really cool looking. It's got a silk screened B side. And it's got the
I was
cool
just
dude
gonna ask.
with a bagged head on it.
Oh wow.
So there we go. You got the sad paper bag man right there. But really powerful stuff. I love this record. I would have loved to see them, but they didn't play I don't think they ever played Canada, so that was a bummer. But I know, I know for Zed, I only have two artists in my collection that are Zed. I have Frank Zappa.
Yep.
I've already listened to a Frank Zappa record this year. I listened to Jazz from Hell.
Yep.
Really, I love the story about that record, how it got a parental advisory sticker on it from the PMRC, but it was instrumental. So there was no lyrics whatsoever on that record. So that's super funny. And then another band I have that I listened to, they were called Zao, Z-A-O, and they are they're a metalcore band from mid to late 2000s, a little bit later than that, but they kind of had like a Christian element to them. And so I joked that I listened to it on like Easter Monday because I was like, you got to listen to the cool Christian metalcore record on Easter Monday. And I thought about it. I was like, I don't have any Zed records to listen to. So I gotta go to the record store tomorrow and find a artist that starts with Z to be able to fill that in.
Some
So
ZZ Top or
see
something.
some ZZ Top or some Zamuto. I know Zamuto is a really cool like instrumental kind of thing, or some Zon.
What I have in Zed, I probably don't have anything.
It's funny. The one that I did listen to, and I was looking through my collection. I think I don't have it anymore. But the one I did listen to that in 2020 that started with Zed was Hans Zimmer was he did I listened to the Interstellar soundtrack, but I don't have it anymore. But so yeah, I guess I'm gonna have to go to the record store. A terrible thing to have to do, right? So, but yeah, one of the other months I remember doing in 2020 was I did a month where I did all my split 12 inches, as many as I could. So I know I think I repeated a couple artists there, but they were a little bit different because it was a bunch of split 12 inches, and
Yep.
I'm surprised how many I actually have. That also is in the emo screamo. A lot of emo bands and stuff like that will do like splits. I have a couple that are a lot of them will do like four band splits, so they'll get like maybe two tracks each, so you get like 8 tracks total. I think the most that I have a six-way split in there. I think I have a 5-way split, a bunch of kind of like smaller bands. So I went through.
Those are just compilation albums by then.
No, it's like, usually it's a band that maybe they wrote a couple songs and they were like, it's better for a label to put out one record with like a bunch of different bands on it. So, and it's cool too because you may be buying a record for like that one band, but you listen to the other 4 and you're like, oh, cool, now I'm a fan of these bands, right? So it's I know they call them like samplers and stuff like that, right?
Yep.
But that's kind of the way to do it. And it's really cool because you'll have maybe a couple different labels go in on it together, right? Split the cost and stuff like that. So you'll have all the records, kind of co-produced or co-released and stuff like that. And, you could have maybe 300 copies of a record, and 100 will be from one label with a cool variant, and 100 will be from another label with a cool variant. And so it's cool that bands and records can do that kind of stuff.
Well, that's what growing up. That's why I used to love picking up a soundtrack and just compilations in general, because then you get these soundtracks with your favorite bands, but then they'd be doing a song that's not on any of their albums, and then there'd be all these other bands on there, with other kind of B-side or like one-off songs that aren't on their regular record, and is kind of a great way to kind of pick up new and different music from different bands that you're already listening to. But
I remember picking up I have a few like movie soundtracks. I don't have too many, and it's mainly just scores and stuff like that. So like I'll be a fan of like 2001: A Space Odyssey, so I got that. I got like A Clockwork Orange. But I remember like a couple of my favorite movies, obviously being record related. Like one of my favorite movies of all time is High Fidelity. So I remember I had a copy of that that they did on for Record Store Day a long time ago. I don't think I have it anymore. I think I sold it. But I had that, and I had Empire Records as well, the Liv Tyler movie.
Have both of those.
I remember having them, and I'm like, I'm such an album person. So like in terms of like listening to a compilation, it's really hard for me because I'm like, well, if I want to listen to this band play this song, I'm going to just go listen to the album. I'm very much a person like, I don't like playlists. I cannot make a playlist to save my life. I know it might be blasphemous or something like that, but if I'm going to listen to something, I'm going to listen to a record from start to finish. Hey, props to people who want to make playlists and they want these different vibes and stuff like that, and all the power to you. I'm just very much a person who if I'm going to listen to a record, I want to experience that record how the band recorded it, right? I don't want to miss anything.
You're not a shuffle dude.
Record. I am not a shuffle person. Absolutely not. When back when I was using an iPod, I wouldn't be like, I'm gonna pick this song. I was like, I'm gonna pick this album and listen to it from front to back, right? I have now unfortunately fallen into the ways of earbuds and Spotify. I used to be real bad purist when it came to like when I go out, I'm listening to my headphones and my iPod. But the conveniences unfortunately overtook me. So it is what it is, I guess.
So yeah, before we end things off, I want to talk about one more thing with you.
Yes, the big one.
The big video games.
Video games. The crossover that I didn't know that I needed, and that my wallet did not want me to need. We'll put it that way. It's yeah. Um, yeah.
So,
what would you like to know?
well, obviously, like I know, um, and I haven't really gotten into this quite that much, if at all. But there have been a few titles now that have been kind of popping up that have piqued my interest, and
Mm-hmm.
I know going to Sonic Boom in the past, I've seen amongst their soundtracks, it's like, oh yeah, video game albums started popping up more and more frequently.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but yeah, we were talking, and I was telling you how Animal Crossing is my jam,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and
I'm right there with you.
and then you popped up your phone and showed me all these albums, and then I was just kind of like, my jaw just dropped.
This one right here, right? So, yeah, yeah. The cool thing, yeah. So, I mean, I can get into video game soundtracks a little bit. Kind of tell you where I kind of started with them, and kind of how
Mm,
I've gotten into like that community. I remember the first video game record that I ever bought was not too long ago, maybe 2018, maybe 2019, back when I was first discovering this stuff. um, I came across a label that is unfortunately, rest in peace, no longer with us, called Ship to Shore Phono Company.
okay.
So they were a label that were doing. They did a lot of. They did the Gradius soundtracks, which is really cool. They did Mr. Gimmick, the big one that I'm surprised. I don't really know how they were able to manage this. But they got the soundtracks for Mother 1 and Mother 2. Mother 2, we might know better over here in North America as Earthbound, Super Nintendo
Mhm.
classic cult RPG. So they did Mother 1 and 2 on vinyl, and I remember coming across it through Bandcamp, and I was like, no way, this is a thing? I can buy these? And I remember that pressing was sold out, completely sold out. It's like, I'm never going to get this again. But then, I started doing some research. I found the Ship to Shore, I found their website, I found their Twitter and stuff like that, and kind of started to get into it a little bit more. So, Ship to Shore was my first experience in terms of video game soundtracks, and then I started to find some more labels. So, Laced Records is a big one. Materia. Um, Space Lab 9. So Space Lab 9 is known
I've heard
for,
of
they've
them.
done a couple, yeah, they did a couple box sets. So one of my favorite games, Skyrim, Elder Scrolls 5, um, unbelievable soundtrack, super ambient. Like, I can't talk enough about that soundtrack. But that's one I got over there. It's a big 4 LP box set that they've done at least 30 variants of. So there is no shortage of that record anywhere. They did The Witcher 3. I know they did the Mass Effect trilogy. So they did some really cool big box sets. Fangamer is they do a lot of even the hard copies of some of the video games and stuff like that. But one of the cool ones that I've finally was able to get my hands on was the Stardew Valley soundtrack.
Okay.
So again, yeah, so they did a 4 LP Stardew Valley soundtrack, and it's really cool because they themed each 4 records as each season. So
Okay.
there is a
Yep.
gray marble, a blue marble, a pink marble, and a yellow marble. So you got your spring, summer, winter, fall, and so you'll have all
Mhm.
the tracks for each season on there. Um, uh, the other cool one is PlayStation themselves, because obviously PlayStation being owned by Sony, they kind of got that Sony Music Corporation tie-in with them, and obviously Sony Music Company being, Sony Music Group being just one of the biggest music companies in the world, they kind of have that at their disposal to press all their soundtracks to vinyl. So
Yeah.
a lot of the first party PlayStation games that you'll find is pretty easy to find on vinyl. I have one of my favorite games of all time is Horizon Zero Dawn. So they put that as a 4 LP set on vinyl, and then when Horizon Forbidden West came out, they did a really big 6 LP collector box. So I got both of those. Um, I know they did the latest Ratchet and Clank game. I picked that up on like Amazon for like $30 shipped. I was like, this is amazing. Ghost of Tsushima, they've done super easy to pick up. And a lot of them you can even pick up through like PlayStation's Gear Store, which is super cool.
Okay.
So there's the official side of things. Now we get to the unofficial side of things. So about 5-6 years ago, I stumbled across a Facebook group that is a really pretty tight-knit community, and they have done a lot of records that have not been done before. Obviously, not to get into too much detail about things, some of the, it's copyrights and all that kind of thing, but really, really cool group of folks. It's a good, few thousand people in the community, and some of the stuff that they have put out is just mind blowing. If you're a fan of Legend of Zelda, get ready for the stuff that they put out, man. There is a Majora's Mask box set out there. There is an Ocarina of Time 3 LP box set out there. There's a Wind Waker 3 LP set out there. There is a Twilight Princess 3 LP set out there. There is a 2 LP set of Oracle of Ages, Oracle of Seasons. I have a cool lathe cut that was like 100 copies of the original Legend of Zelda soundtrack. So I got that. Zelda 2 is out. Link to the Past is out. Link's Awakening is out. Like it's all out there.
So it sounds like you're telling me that basically I need to be in the right groups or need to be following the right accounts on social or be a part of the right email or mailing lists. And
it's the community it's very, very tight knit, and because for obvious reasons, right? Like they want to know that you're trustworthy, that you're not going to be blabbing about things. Like everything that I've mentioned is out. It is public knowledge. You can find these things, if you dig deep enough.
But even on the official side, it sounds like I still kind of need to be in the know and on lists and once you're exactly. Yeah. I mean, I would recommend always, like, if you're interested in some of these things, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, following those labels are really, really, they'll post, when things are dropping. There's a really cool label called Data Discs. They're based out of the UK, and they do a lot of Sega games. And you can find them pretty regularly. I know I've seen copies of some Data Disc stuff at like Sonic Boom. They've done stuff like Gunstar Heroes and a lot of like old Sega Genesis games and Master System stuff. Things like that. It's crazy because I just finished Sea of Stars.
Yes.
And the soundtrack on that is amazing. And it was just kind of like, oh, there's a pre-order for the vinyl. It's like
there is, yeah.
And it's like, oh, okay, the vinyl's like $45 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
It's like throw it in the cart.
Yeah.
And then go to the end. Shipping is $35.
Oh man. So we could go on a whole other tangent about shipping, my man. It's the amount that I've ordered and the recent like dings that I've been getting through UPS and stuff like that. It's really tough. We have it really bad up here, especially in Canada. Like I look at the people who are shipping states to states and their $5 media mail. I'll forever be jealous of that. Like, can we just get like $10 flat rate international shipping? Like, please, that's all I want. Right. But I mean, in terms of I got a big crate over here with a bunch of cool things. I'll pull out a couple. Let's see what we got here. So, this is one that I found, and I know it's a very sought after one. I found this on Facebook Marketplace, and I couldn't believe that I found it on there. The person who was selling it, they gave me a good price on it. But this is F-Zero. So Super Nintendo F-Zero, awesome futuristic racing record. This is actually a first pressing of it, and it's a very, very it's pretty sought after. So the fact that I was able to pick this up locally without even having to pay for shipping is pretty exciting for that. Some of the labels do some really, really cool stuff. This is Pokemon Pinball, Game Boy Advance. Sorry, original Game Boy game. But they did it was cool because that game had like a rumble pack in it. But the label did these really cool, and if you can see that, they did 151 different center labels with all 151 original Pokemon on it. So I got a Poliwrath here, which is super cool. One that I picked up. This is Shovel Knight. You ever played Shovel Knight?
Mm-hmm.
This is I found this actually at a local shop, which was really, really exciting. So that one's really cool. This one is a couple of these here are really sweet. The label is well known. They were an unofficial label, but they were probably one of the original labels who were doing this. There was a label called Moonshake Records, and they did a bunch of NES and Super Nintendo stuff. So what I have here is not Melancholy and the Infinite Sadness. That is the Metroid trilogy. So this is Metroid 1, Metroid 2 Return of Samus, and Super Metroid from
that's amazing.
From Super Nintendo. So they got the Melancholy and Infinite Sadness on the back, and on the other side, that is not the Velvet Underground and Nico. That is a Morph Ball. That is, you can actually peel this off. You can peel the sticker, and it's Samus underneath it, like all curled up in a ball. So that's a very, very, very sought after. I was able to get a bunch of these from a buddy of mine who was selling his collection locally, and I was like, "You have these?" And we got into it, and we were talking about it. It's like, "How do you have these?" He's like, "I got them when they released." I was like, yeah, "I'll take them. I'll trade you some stuff for them." So we got the original Metal Gear Solid. That is not Black Sabbath Volume 4.
I love how they've just kind of taken like regular album covers and kind of made it their own.
This label was the big thing. So the big one he had it, but he sold it on me, which is fair because he got a good amount of money. But they did a Zelda collab. They did like a bunch of the songs on it, and of course, big Triforce in the middle, Prism going through it. They did Dark Side of the Moon.
Oh, nice.
It's amazing. It is the sought after one that they have on there. A couple more of these. This is not Yoshimi Battles the Pink Robots by Flaming Lips. There's Mega Man 3. Super, super cool. They did a couple best of the NES, so they did these really cool like Andy Warhol style artworks on them. You have to Rob the Robot and the Zapper Gun.
That's another popular album cover. I can't remember what it is right now, but when you pulled it up, it's that cover.
Yeah, I think there was like, I've seen something like very similar to that, and then they did a Volume 1 and Volume 2, so you got the NES as well as the Power Glove on there, which is super cool. One of the other big sought after ones is this crazy that I own this. I sometimes look, I'm like, how do I have these again? This is Pokemon Red and Blue. This is not Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band. They did a big mashup of all 151 Pokemon on there, and they did a really cool cover like that with they did it as the Beatles Sgt. Pepper's Lonely Hearts Club Band.
Are they getting licensed? Like, are they licensing the music to do this, or?
That's all I'll say.
Yeah.
It is, again, some of the groups are, you have to know people. We'll put it that way. That is all I'll say.
Yeah.
A couple other cool ones. So again, we had the Animal Crossing. This is my favorite game of all time. This is number one. Nothing will ever beat this game. And this was my grail when I got into the hobby. This was the number one thing I wanted on vinyl. I was originally able to get it when it was announced and when it was put out, I put out like an in search of like, I know I want this, please. This is like my favorite game of all time. I've wanted this for many, many years. Somebody reached out to me and they sold it to me. And I remember I've ordered many, many packages in my life.
Yep.
This, and I'll never, it's hard to forget this, but the tracking said it showed up. I look in my mailbox. I look around. It says it's delivered. I look in my mailbox. There is the shipping label, just a piece of paper. I was like, what happened? And so I messaged the guy. Long story short, he refunded me. I'll do all this stuff. But I've never experienced that before. It almost looked like somebody had cut the label off of a mailer and just stuck it in my mailbox. And I was like, this cannot be happening. And then somebody reached out and offered me a copy. And then maybe 2 weeks later, I was invited to the group that put it out. And I was like, okay, sure. Of course, of course this is finally, happened, right? So, but, hey, good things come to those who wait, I guess, right? So, yeah, I'll pull out a couple more little quick ones just to show the folks. One of my favorites, probably one of my favorite sports games is, this is 1080 snowboarding. If you remember N64, that's, again, as we were talking about a little bit earlier, for the kind of like jungle and high energy stuff, right? A lot of that on this soundtrack, and this is a really, really cool one. One of my other favorite games that I'm super stoked that I finally have this is just the Super Mario World. The first game I ever beat on my own as a kid, 100%ed. So that means this is really cool. It's on this really sweet yellow vinyl. But yeah, this was on my want list for a long, long time, and I was able to trade with somebody in the community. Trading is a big thing. It's like you come across something that somebody else wasn't able to get ahead of. It's like, hey, I have this, you have that. Let's do some trades, right? So, this is another cool one. This is not London Calling. This is Castlevania 1 and 2, I believe. So another, again, Moonshake right there. But yeah, I mean, that's just a small smattering of, like, I probably have close to 100 video game soundtracks, and it's really cool because sometimes there's some of the games I've never played before, but like I know the soundtrack is banger, right? So it's like really cool to have it on that kind of format, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's a lot of really cool stuff.
The fact that you played or not played the game doesn't necessarily play into you owning the vinyl. Then,
no, like I mean, I'll know what franchises that I like, right? So like I played most of this, a good amount of the Zelda games, but there's some that I haven't.
Yep.
So I would have loved to, I've actually never played, Majora's Mask, but I would love to have it because I know that the music is going to be really, really good in it. I have a few Final Fantasy records. I have this one here is really cool. This is Final Fantasy 6, or as we knew it over here, Final Fantasy 3, because the Japan stuff was really cool. But yeah, I've never played this game. I have it. I own it. It's literally on my shelf right there. But I've never. But I know, like, Nuobu Uematsu is like one of the gods of video game soundtracks. I think one of my favorites that I still don't has just Final Fantasy 7. That soundtrack is just unbelievable, and I would love to own that at one point. But that's also been done officially. Sony has put it out, but they've only ever done it on picture disc. And I have my opinions about picture discs, which I'll leave for another time. So,
well, I mean, I'm we can get into picture discs and all this colored vinyl and sound quality and whatnot, and but that's
for part two. That's for part two
conversation.
There we go. It's fun. It's fun to when Another one that actually just recently got printed, and another one of my favorite games was a game called Braid, which is really cool puzzle platformer. Really cool story, really cool twists and kind of what it was. And that's one I've wanted for a long time. And they just announced it maybe last week. That Laced Records is putting that out. So Braid for their anniversary is putting out that, which I'm really excited for. So that was an auto order for me for sure.
So with the more official releases, where's the best place? Like is Sonic Boom the best place to go to kind of find some of this stuff? Or
in Toronto,
or we?
I've actually just had a conversation about this with somebody who is going to come up here and visit soon. And they put out there, we're going to be in Toronto for a couple of weeks. Anybody know good record stores to hit up? Anybody with video game soundtracks? I'm like, so places you want to go to, obviously I mentioned Rotate, Sonic Boom, all these places. Sonic Boom probably has the best selection in the city. And even then it's fairly dry. There's like a couple of the official stuff and they're fine. I've seen like the God of War Ragnarok soundtrack, which is really cool. I've seen a couple other ones that they've done. They did a couple of volumes of these like these jackpot pinball ones, and I've seen those there. And once in a while, you can find like somebody who's traded things in at Sonic Boom, like obviously with them being used. I remember seeing a copy of like Uncharted 4 there, which was really cool. I've seen like Battlefield 2042 and some of the games that you like don't really pay attention to the soundtrack, like some of those like first person shooters. Like some of the Call of Duty ones aren't bad. They're really well orchestrated.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Like Doom would be a great one to have on soundtrack, especially if you're a metal fan. You got the low end for Doom, which is super cool. Another little place that does carry them is just up the street from Sonic Boom. Actually, is ANC Games. Right on the corner of College of Spadina, retro video game store. But they sometimes will have a crate or two of video game soundtracks. And one that I've picked up from there was one that I had seen around and I couldn't believe that it was there, and I wish I had pulled it out. But Nintendo did officially put out an Animal Crossing soundtrack.
Yep.
They did.
Yeah,
I think it's called the Todakeke Collection. Columbia Records actually put it out, which is super cool. Like Columbia, Japan, and it costs a bunch to import, but luckily I found it there. It was like $64.99. I was like, okay, I know I'm going to be paying, about that plus the shipping for it if I'm going to get it imported. So I was over the moon when I found it there. But I've seen. What have I seen there? I've seen a couple of the Data Discs releases. I've seen a couple of the Call of Duties. I saw Gang Beasts there. If you ever played Gang Beasts, really cool. Like, it's a really cool. If you ever played like Human Fall Flat or those weird like kind of physics-based games.
Yep.
They had that there, which is a really cool find for sure. Which is.
I'll definitely need to check them out next time I'm in the city.
Yeah. Again, so the places, a place that I went to, not in the city, but if you're ever out in Seattle, there is a couple stores called Al's Music and Games, and they have a huge collection of video game soundtracks. They get a lot of these unofficial ones that people will send to them so that they can kind of sell them in store. And across the street from them is a place called Hi-Fi Lo-Fi, which is like an offshoot of that store. And they have a lot of video game soundtracks, a lot of the official stuff too, which is really cool. I went on a trip last year to Seattle, and I remember having to buy. I was there for 2 days. On the second day, I had to buy a new tote bag because the tote bag I brought with me did not fit all the records that I had to bring home. And I brought home about 30 records. It was awful in the best way possible.
That sounds awful.
Yeah. Oh, it was funny. I remember bringing it with me, and I think somebody asked me if I wanted to like check it. I was like, no, go away. This is my carry-on. And I'm like clutching this bag of records in to my chest. I was like, I am absolutely not letting this go. So, store my little bag of change of clothes under the seat and bring on this big old tote bag of records that I brought back with me. So,
Well, I'm gonna have to
yeah.
invite you to a record store that you haven't been to before. Um, on my Animal Crossing island, I actually have a record
Okay.
shop, and
Oh, cool. Yeah, I'll definitely have to check it out.
it's its own building. The whole place.
Nice.
One room's like there's a listening room, a recording studio, a karaoke bar, the main record shop, and then there's like performance space slash um, stand and repeat where you could do signings.
Oh, very cool. Yeah, it's been a while since I've turned on my New Horizons, but yeah, I'll definitely take a fly over, right, and see what y'all got going on over there. So,
So I don't know if you generally do you have socials or anything that people can find you at. You don't have like a Instagram or something that you share your music with.
so yeah, I don't have an Instagram where I share like anything like that. Like I just have like my normal Facebook. My main kind of thing that I use as like a platform to like post any cool things is on my Instagram. It's at Medieval Reveries. So it's MEDIEVALREVERIES. Probably put it somewhere in your down there, right? Mainly it's me taking photos of really cool things that I find in nature or really cool photos of shows. That's pretty
Awesome.
much it. I've had a couple bands actually like repost and like post on their page of like some of my shots, and it's really cool. I just do it like just because I have fun with it. I don't like publish it or put it in like any which way or form, but I'm really proud of like some of the captures and shots that I have. It's all like grayscale. It's just it's the aesthetic, it's the vibe, but I really enjoy doing it.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, hey, if you want to follow and see some cool photos, then by all means, that would be super cool. So
Awesome. Brandon, thank you for taking the time to be on the show.
I had a great time. Invite me back. I'd love to be on it again.
And if you like this content or any of our other podcasts, feel free to like and subscribe to the channel. And feel free to share this with your friends. And we'll see you guys soon. Cheers.